There was a day when a black child could get 40 lashes for being caught with a book. Reading was not the province of the enslaved, not only because it sharpened the intellectual nettle, but it transported the reader to wide possibilities, firing the imagination and creating the world way beyond the confines of bondage. Reading was escape, liberation that broke the chains and set us free. Then and now, words, ideas, and characters jump from the page and carry us on a journey to explore and expand who we are, to become who we ought to be, defy the limits that others impose. Black women read a lot, alone, in pairs and in circles. Legions of book clubs and reading groups gather to commune and give themselves permission to laugh, love, ruminate, and reach above the ground. What's equally marvelous? Black women write. She wrote the book on dreams, memories, mama, love story, politics, and adventure. This summer, be voracious. Feed that appetite. Partake in a festival of books from every genre: novels, memoirs, biographies, graphical tales, love stories, history, or sci fi. At the beach, at the park, at the pool, at bedtime, bound or in audibles, bring your trusted companion. Travel to the past or outer space, and then carry them with you into the fall. You'll never be lonely. I'm Gwen McKinney for Unerased Black Women Speak.
Welcome back to Unerased Black Women Speak. My name is Carolyn Malachi, and I am your host today with two amazing authors. Let's introduce you to the first one.
My name is Diane McKinney Whetstone, and I'm an author of 7 novels, and the most recent, Our Jen, is a bit of a beach read, which is different for me.
Diane, is there a special category that makes for a great summer read?
I think that it falls in with just what we think about when we think about the beach. I mean, it is generally a departure from the routine, from the workday, from the whole home life, from whatever our normal is. So it's a departure from normal. And so a beach read for me should also be that. It should be a bit of an escape, and it should have feeling. I feel the sun at the beach and the heat and the light, and I smell the salt in the water, and I hear the waves and the children playing, and I taste, the ginger tea that I'm sipping. I want all of my senses also engaged in the read. So I want to feel the characters. I want to feel the place. I just want to be transported. I want to be away from my normal daily reading the New York Times and checking my Twitter feed for the latest news of the day. Like, no, I don't want that. I want to be transported. I want to be lightened, even as I want to feel very deeply.
Do you ever find yourself writing specifically for the summer market?
I never have. In fact, that's what makes Our Jen, I think, unique for me. When I was working on the book, we were living through the pandemic. Everything felt heavy. It just felt dark. And I needed levity. I needed to lighten things up. I needed to laugh. And so I started rewriting the book, and scenes that were particularly sad, I looked at in a different way and found something there that has some wit and had some humor. And so I exploited that because it is what I needed. Our Jen then became a lighter story. I mean, the characters certainly have past. It certainly has its heft, but it also has its lightness.
You've written several books with young Black women and sexuality at the center. Your next book is about senior members of our community in our youth-dominated society. Was there any hesitation about writing about retired people?
Not for me at all, just because I think that it is such an untapped audience. I know that my agent had conversations with editors who loved the book, but were just hesitant because the characters were older. I had my fun as a youth. I think young people should run the world, absolutely, but that's certainly not to deny the very healthy existence of people who are 55 and beyond. So there was no hesitation for me at all. I mean, they're dealing with relationships. They're dealing with whatever is going on around them with their current circumstances. I mean, they're dealing with, maybe not to the extent that a younger person does, but, the self-doubt. And in addition to that, they're dealing with the looking back over the choices that they've made, their past and all of that, that certainly inform their present day. So, not a whole lot different, really. I mean, they're struggling. We all struggle, whatever age. I think the struggles change a bit. People my age perhaps have more perspective that can guide us further, but there's still struggles, and not getting around the struggles, as long as we're breathing.
One very interesting aspect of our gen is that these beautiful Black characters you've written about, yes, they're retired people, but they're also using marijuana. So what was your motivation and intent in using marijuana as part of the storytelling?
I think that part of what happens in the gen is that they revert to, as they're all living on this 55 plus active living community, that they revert to the pleasures of their youth, and marijuana for many of them, that was a part of it. They smoked weed, and so one of the main characters, Cynthia, has not smoked since college. And so this was a huge departure for her. But then she just remembered how, how it helped alleviate stress. She went to the Ivy League and, fighting that like great white wave of privilege day in and day out. And then to come back to her dorm and be there with her roommates and her friends, and they'd piece together little money from their work study paychecks, to buy this weed, and then to smoke it, and then suddenly it was like, oh, okay. And so Cynthia does this also in this new situation. She reverts to that feeling of, oh, okay. She smokes the weed, and it's like that familiar feeling of, okay, maybe this is not so bad after all.
My name is Patrick Henry Bass. I am an executive editor at Amistad, which is a part of HarperCollins Publishers. In the publishing industry, a summer read are often fiction, and they're often escapist books. So the long tradition of beach reads, which really developed around the late 1960s, early 1970s, were novels by Sidney Sheldon and Hal Robbins that introduced readers into the jet set, to worlds unlike anything that, a Midwestern school teacher had ever experienced. And so through these characters who traveled from Milan to Paris to Australia on private jets and caviar, it gave them not only relief from their own day-to-day lives, but it also gave them a sense to sort of peek behind the curtain, if you will, of the wealthy and the powerful. And today we have a wide variety of beach reads. As publishing evolves, as we evolve, so you now have books by Jennifer Weiner, that often have non-traditional heroines who are not stick figures, who do not have a perfume business, who may be a little messy, like in her shoes, I think it was, which was a real breakout. We now have more African-American beach reads, both hardcover and trade paperback. We have all types of things. They're vampire beach reads. They're a lot of murder mysteries, a lot of murder mysteries. A lot of people really do like the cozy murder mystery where someone goes someplace like to Cape Cod or Martha's Vineyard or someplace bucolic and yet a dead body turns up. My list of acquisitions is 50% fiction and 50% nonfiction. And so there are several projects that I will have beginning with our Jen that are just natural fits for a beach read. Like I have a mystery series. I believe, I can't announce it yet, but it's really exciting. Written by African-American male author and featuring an African-American male detective. And that just screamed a beach read because you also don't want a particular book to get lost. So for fall of 2022, we know that it's all going to be about the midterms and politics and, so many races that are going to be too close to call. So I want to keep authors away from that. And then in the winter, people become a little bit more sober. People are thinking about a new year, new me. It takes a village to raise a child, but it also takes a village to launch a book. It begins with the acquisition, and that's my role, to acquire the project, for now, let's say fiction and beach reads, and to provide the author with the greatest care possible. That means my undivided attention, any advice that I can impart to the author about making the characters, although it's fiction, to make them as flesh and blood as possible, to really make the reader care about the characters. And that's where the talent of the author comes in, because what authors like Diane McKinney Whetstone do so brilliantly is they invent these made-up people, and then they surround them with the most lyrical language that keeps you not only interested in the character, but also it keeps you turning the page because the writing is so lush and gorgeous and creative and colorful. I would love for your audience to check out Our Jen by Diane McKinney Whetstone. And then 2 historical novels that Amistad recently published, Things Past Telling by Sheila Williams, and A Woman of Endurance by Dalma Lalanos Figueroa.
The use of marijuana in Our Jen is interesting because you wrote an article in 2019 for the Philadelphia Magazine entitled, "Pot is super popular among my fellow boomers, so why can't I get on board?" Has anything changed for you?
I just went through this whole metamorphosis, I suppose, about marijuana. I mean, I confess to smoking, a fair amount of weed in my early 20s. And then, when I had children and as they got older, there was this sense of, but I don't want them to do it. I mean, it might affect their brain. There was the whole war on drugs thing and that commercial with the egg, and this is your brain on drugs, and, all of that. And my view changed as they got older. And particularly I worried about my son and what was happening to young Black men just with trace amounts of marijuana. And so I took a this for me, conservative view of, no, drugs are bad. All drugs are bad. I mean, I really put marijuana up there with certainly much more harmful substances. I changed. I mean, if these corporate white people are making money, when all these young Black lives, some have been ruined as a result of being stopped and frisked and having a little bit of weed. I mean, I know people who've had to pay thousands of dollars for legal representation for their college students who had, a pipe with a trace amount of marijuana in it. I mean, so that is that's enraging that people are making money off of this now.
Do you see or do you view Our Jen as sort of like a PSA? Is this your way of getting the word out into the community like, hey, it's not all bad. Hey, maybe we've been misinformed.
A little bit. Maybe at least for these people in this time on this retirement village, it certainly works for them.
I'm curious, have you ever met any of your characters, or are they all born from your imagination?
They are pretty much born from my imagination. I mean, they maybe, I think all of the characters in all of my books may start off as seeds of people who I know or have known. But once I start writing and the characters interact with each other and they interact with a sense of place that becomes compelling for me, the characters change and they pull me along and I just scramble along the page following them.
Diane, as I'm listening to you speak, I'm hearing you say that you allow yourself to become a vessel for the art. You don't get in the way of the art. You let the art just develop into itself. Is that a skill that you had to learn, or is it something that was just natural to you as a writer?
That is such a good question because that's something I struggled with early on. I mean, when I was working on my first novel, Tumbling, Terry McMillan was very successful and was also being criticized about her portrayal of Black men. And I started that first novel with the mantra that the Black men in my novels are going to be good, upstanding, faultless people. And as I was working on a novel, there was a jazz singer and there was Herbie, one of the main characters. And it was as if the two were saying to me, if you put us in the same paragraph, we are going to get together. And it was like, no, but Herbie, you can't. You're supposed to be like, my good Black man, you cannot do this. I continued to write the book resisting the impulse and resisting the call of the characters to pull me in a certain direction until finally I had to relent. And when I did, the story took off. It became a novel then. And I realized that to think that I know what the story is about and to write it as if I know what the story is about can be the most paralyzing thing for the story because the story knows what it's about. It's up to me as the author to discover that and then to render that.
In our gen, weed is part of the fun and friendship building. But the book is really a suspense novel. It'll be released a few weeks after the first airing of our podcast. So can you give us a short preview?
Sure. It is set on a retirement village, 55 plus active living retirement village called the sexagenarian. And sexagenarian, means 60 years old. And the people come from different paths and different places, and they find each other. Cynthia is the main character, reluctantly moves there. She meets Block and Tish and Lavia. Everyone assumes Lavia is, from India. She is not specific about where she's from. So that is, part of the mystery. She says she's from everywhere and nowhere. Tish is, the kind of typical fading beauty, does not want to let go of her youth. Block was a boy genius in his day who loves to party, and he's the one who supplies the weed. And Cynthia is the reluctant one. But they find each other and they get together and they just enjoy each other. But, beneath the fun and froth, the storms gather as their pasts that they are all grappling with just come to the fore once they move to the gen. So the novel goes back and forth between the current time and their past that are, something.
What an evolution. This has been really fantastic, Diane. Just to wrap up, beyond the collection of Diane McKinney Whetstone, what summer reads do you recommend?
The Vanishing Half, which is about Britt Bennett. It captured me and didn't let me go. It's been out for a couple of years now, but that is one that I think would be especially good.
Our next featured guest is author Tia Williams. Her website notes that NBC News calls her a writer's writer with a fashionista twist. She's the author of The Accidental Diva, the It Chick series, and the film adaptation of her award-winning 2016 novel, The Perfect Find, will star Gabrielle Union. Her latest novel, 7 Days in June, was an instant New York Times and USA Today bestseller, as well as a Reese's Book Club pick for June of 2021. A TV series adaptation is in development with Will Packer Productions. Welcome to the podcast, the great Tia Williams.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me.
Our segment today is She Wrote the Book, Summer Reads. Summer reading is a real category for the reading public. So how do you define a great summer read?
To me, it's not really about a genre. It's about escapism because the summertime, we're all still working. It's not like, we're in 5th grade and then we have a summer break. But even, as an adult, you still have that sort of summer vacation feeling. And hopefully you are going to take a vacation at some point in the summer. And so you want a book that sort of lends itself to that escapism that takes you away, that is transportive. And yeah, it's definitely cross genre. It's whatever does that for you. Depressing reads don't fall into this category. The darker reads probably don't, It's about uplifting.
You probably don't write for the summer market then?
I don't know how to write light without having a little bit of dark in it, because that's life.
Now, our senior producer says that she breezed through 7 Days in June, noting that she loved the character's intelligence, the intrigue of the storytelling, and the phrase, the Black literati. How do you decide to write a love story that opens in a bookstore?
To me, nothing's more romantic than books and paper and the smell of bookstores and the tactile feeling. And, authors create worlds. That in of itself is so romantic. I'm not talking about romance in terms of picnics and flowers. I mean, romance as in a perspective, a point of view, like mythologizing everything you see kind of a thing. The way poets can make the most mundane, incident so beautiful. That's what books do. That's what authors do. And I feel like two writers in love lends itself to high romance. Given the way they even sort of deal with each other, they have been communicating to each other through their books for the past 15 years. They haven't spoken in real life, but they're each other's muses based on this 1 week romance that they had in high school that no one knows about. So it just felt romantic to set it in the book world.
My name is Sharon Pugh, and I'm a member of the North Portal Readers, which is a collective of neighbors and friends in Washington who love to read. And the group has been in existence for 20 years. We span demographics. We have generations. One of our oldest members is 105. And we have some, the youngest are in their 50s. In addition to reading, we do explore other, I call them literary outlets, but they're not just from reading. We'll do theater, we'll do musical performances, any stage performance, operas or dance performances. So it's really just a group, and we collectively will go wherever we want to go. Doesn't have to be here in Washington, and we'll just venture to enjoy ourselves. We don't have elected officials, elected officers, or anything like that. People who decide, the way we have it is we'll pick a month, people take a month, they make a selection who are going to host, and they select a book or whatever the venue, the option is going to be to host. Pre-COVID, The host duties entail actual physical hosting the group in your home or for a meal or at a restaurant. But we have continued during COVID by meeting on Zoom. And of course, we have visible sharing of some of our libations as we sit around and gab. On average, we'll have anywhere from 20 to 30 participants during a session. We've had a coordinator for many years who would actually summarize our sessions, give a recap of the discussion. And also, we tend to post links to the various books or the authors of the books to give people some additional insight on the topic or the author. How do we make our book selection? We leave it up to the individual who is scheduled, who has volunteered to host a session. And it changes by month. And it can vary. We don't have any particular category of writing or category of authors. We're open to all kinds of material. We'll do mysteries, nonfiction, fiction. We use Black authors, female authors, Native American authors. We'll use foreign authors. We are just open. And I think the idea, it really depends on the interest, I think, of whoever's hosting. They will tend to select a book based on their interest or something they want to pursue, or even something that may have come up in general discussions among the members of the group. Coming into the summers is ripe time to unwind and relax and kick back and find some light reading. North Portal Readers generally does not get together during the summer. But for me personally, I'm looking for something that's going to get me out of this morass and all the angst, get me away from all the angst and the strife, hate and discord that's been going on. And it doesn't matter to me if it's going to be fantasy, science fiction, an adventure story, a memoir, or a mystery, just something that will be light, refreshing, to replenish my soul and lift my spirit. Some of the books I have decided I'm going to read this summer are Chronicles from the Land of the Happiest People on Earth by Wole Soyinka, Finding Me by Viola Davis, Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr, and I might attempt The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois by Honorée Fanonne Jeff. It's a little ambitious, we'll see, but again, it's just anything that's going to be kind of light and refreshing and easy on the mind.
For those of us who need to get to 7 days in June, who are the Black literati?
So the Black literati, it's funny because Zora and Langston had a very different name. It rhymes with Black literati, but we shan't say it. You have to look it up. But it's a community of Black writers, journalists, poets, authors, songwriters, Black people that deal with words. There's a lot of us in New York. There's a ton of us in Brooklyn, which is where I live. And I just kind of wanted to shine a light into what that community is like. I thought it was cool, like you would see a glimpse of it. And this is so sad to say. It's like 20 years ago, over 20 years ago, Love Jones, you had like this like fabulous group of like really creative Black friends and, a photographer, a writer, or this or that. I wanted to show what the modern version of that is like. And it's a lot like high school, You have your loudmouth hotep, you have your, incense burning spiritual chick. Like, there's a little bit of every persona in there, and everyone is so different. And that's also something that, is historically hard to find. Like, obviously Black people are not a monolith. So I love to show that, yeah, we're all Black, but we are all coming from different sides of the story. We're bringing different backgrounds to two experiences, different perspectives.
It sounds like you've met your characters. Is that true, or are they all just born from your imagination?
I mean, they're like composites of, people that I know and snippets of conversations that I've overheard, situations I've been in. I'm definitely inspired by people that I know, but I don't really base characters on real people. It's always like a mishmash.
To protect the innocent?
Or guilty. I have 2 books in the works because I had an adult book planned, but then also everyone seemed to really love the character of Audrey in 7 Days in June, who is Eva's daughter, 12-year-old daughter. And she's very precocious. She goes to a Brooklyn private school where she just runs everything and has a therapy side hustle business where she she provides her therapy services to her classmates on Snapchat.
In closing, beyond the collection of Tia Williams, what summer reads do you recommend?
Anything by Jasmine Guillory. She writes fantastic escapist romance. Who else? I love Talia Hibbert's novels. Alyssa Cole, if you like historical romance, she's a Black historical romance writer. Actually, she writes every genre. And Farah Rashan, another amazing Black writer who writes fantastic. Like if you're on a beach, you need one of her novels, definitely.
Thank you. Our beach bags are packed and complete now with your recommendations. So Tia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Our culture pop for this episode is The Librarian by Nikki Giovanni, read by Joya Jefferson Nuri.
At a time when there was no TV before 3 p.m., and on Sunday none before 5, we sat on the front porch watching the JFIG sign go on and off, greeting the neighbors, who were discussing political situations and congratulating the preacher on his sermon. There was always the radio, which brought us songs from WLAC in Nashville, and what we would now call easy listening as smooth jazz. But when I listened late in the night on my portable, which I was so proud of, radio, tucked under my pillow, I heard Nat King Cole and Matt Dennis, June Chrisley, and Ella Fitzgerald, and sometimes Sarah Vaughan sang Black Coffee, which I drink now. It was called just music then, nothing special. There was a bookstore uptown on Gay Street, which I visited and inhaled that wonderful odor of new books. Even today, I read hardcover as a preference, paperback only as a last resort. And up on the hill on Vine Street, the Black Corridor, sat the Carnegie Library. Mrs. Long, always glad to see you. The stereoscope, always ready to show you faraway places to dream about. Mrs. Long asking what you're looking for today. When I wanted Leaves of Grass or Alfred North Whitehead, she would go to the big library upstairs, and I now know, hat in hand, to ask to borrow so I might borrow. Probably they said something humiliating, since Southern whites like to humiliate Southern blacks. But nonetheless, she brought back the books, back to me, and I held them close to my chest, close to my heart, and happily skipped back to my grandmother's house, where I would sit on the front porch in a gray glider and dream of a world far away. I loved the world where I was. I was safe and warm, and grandmother gave me neck kisses when I was going off to bed. But there was a world somewhere out there, and Mrs. Long opened that wardrobe, but no lions or witches scared me. I went through knowing there would be spring.
Thanks for listening to Unerased Black Women Speak, made possible by support from the Craig Newmark Philanthropies, the Park Foundation, TD Charitable Foundation, and anonymous donors. Our theme song is Unerased by Carolyn Malachi. We had help from Joya Jefferson Nuri, Joshua Levi Perrin, Alyssa Davis, Alex Kavoris, Jovita Hill, Marisol Bello, and social media coordinators Antoinette Miner and April McKellar Perry. Our audio producer and host is Carolyn Malachi. Gwen McKinney is our creator and executive producer. All of us at Unerased Black Women Speak invite you to tune in to our next episode. While you're there, please subscribe and visit us online at unerasedbws.com.